Hey guys, it's Graham. What's cracking? Growing up as a kid in the 90s with parents that didn't want us wasting too much time on TV and video games, my brothers and I would go to the library a lot to dig up whatever books we could on whatever subject interested us. Now in the 90s, during the summer when movies came out, it wasn't, let's have a whole bunch of Fast and Furious or let's have a whole bunch of superhero movies. I mean, we didn't even get Transformers until 2007, and boy, I needed that growing up. But no, the three types of summer blockbusters you'd get that the whole family could go see were natural disaster movies, alien movies, and dinosaur movies. Especially, with the success of Jurassic Park in '93. But, that sent us scrambling to grab dinosaur books, and one of them that we found that we all read and that we probably all forgotten about. I still randomly think about this book every couple of years, and it just so happens that a friend slid into my DMs and said, hey, have you heard of this book? I was like, holy crap, I haven't read that one since maybe 7th grade. It's by Robert, I think his name is pronounced Bakker. It looks like Bakker, but with 2 Ks. So, yeah, some foreign name. Like, we're not all foreign. Anyway, whatever. Dutch. Freaky deaky Dutch. He is an actual paleontologist who has studied the fossil record and what it has to say about Utah raptors, which are larger than actual velociraptors, significantly larger. In fact, I've been to the it's like a Utah State University East Campus or whatever in Price, Utah. They have a natural history museum there with a bunch of partial Utah raptor skeletons. Those ones are closer to the size of what you've seen in the Jurassic Park movies. A real velociraptor is about the size of a very small dog. Well, not very small, like not the size of a chihuahua. They're like a big chicken. Deinonychus is bigger than that. Those are more like, about the size of a wolf. Utah raptors are about the size of a fully grown man or bigger. But Robert Bakker decided to write an interesting fusion of nonfiction and fiction. It's a novelization of a series of events in a Utah raptor's life, based on what he knows from the fossil record about how these animals behaved. Now, from a writing perspective, this presents a unique challenge because, how do you, to the extent that it's possible, how do you anthropomorphize an animal without giving it written language or really a present-day human frame of reference with which to interact and observe the world? Sometimes you're going to need to build some crutches to walk your character through this. You're going to have to think or he'll say the character's name was RAPTOR Red, that's the name of the book. He has to come up with a naming convention. What would this Utah raptor use to refer to herself? What was she trying to accomplish? What was the point of her story? If he's just, walking through and showing us a day in the life or several years in the life of this Utah raptor female. He gets into the importance of the olfactory senses and how they get really good at reading scat from others of their species or other animals generally. And it makes for an interesting read. It was a lot more interesting in 7th grade than it was recently. My local library had a copy and I decided to brush up on it before talking about it here. And I'm less interested in that kind of stuff now, but if I was doing homework on dinosaurs, it would make a great read and a quick audiobook listen. But a friend of mine who is the only other person outside of my family who's heard of this book, a friend of mine who slid in my DMs recently, he said that he was trying to recommend it to a loved one, saying, hey, read this book. It shows you how you might write from the perspective of an animal character. And I've thought about that. There are obviously plenty of books out there that tell stories from the perspective of an animal. Jack London's White Fang was one. But White Fang was interacting with humans, and so it was easy for a human reader to see, what the humans were doing, even if you were looking at it through the lens of this animal that didn't understand what humans were doing. With Raptor Red, it's a little bit different because this is, a real-time following a Utah raptor's life as she's about to have a nest of, Bakker refers to them as chicks. I was going to say, raptor babies. Have a nest of raptors with her mate, but then her mate dies during a hunt on a larger animal, and suddenly she's got to go find a new mate again. And I thought about it, and it's like, this makes for, if you're just flipping the covers and trying to read this thing beginning to end, it can be kind of boring. But if you're looking at this as an analytical writing exercise, you might say that the comparison between the animal and the human is that you need to know what they value in order to tell the story effectively. That's how you would do it with a human character. You got to figure, what is it that they want? What are they after? What is impeding them in their progress toward the thing that they are after? And what are the consequences of them not achieving what they are after? You would really approach it the same way. Excuse me, I've been up all night. With an animal character, you would probably have to come up with different mechanisms for explaining, how this animal views the world. And again, you go back to values. They look at the world in terms of their greatest needs. Food, shelter, protection, pack, mate, offspring, things like that. You would dial down the philosophizing and the pontificating that you get from human characters, and instead, like the raptor is constantly looking for what she values the most. I've probably learned that from reading a number of animal books over the years, but this one in particular, I think, offers a fresher perspective on that particular trope. You get some things that you don't get with other animal books, especially with so many modern animal books being anthropomorphized. The mice speak English, that kind of thing. It must have been a very challenging book to write, but I'm sure it was also very rewarding because Bakker got to apply all of the things that he'd learned over his fossil hunting career, and as a scientist observing these animals and how, based on what we can read from the past, how they actually behaved. It's worth a read at the very least once. I tried reading it again recently. I'm sure that my tastes have changed in the last 25 years, as well as my methodology for reading something, so I didn't quite get into it as much as I did when I was 12, 13 years old, but obviously my attention span has changed, so that just makes sense. But yeah, go check out, see if your local library has a copy of Raptor Red by Robert Bakker. Read through it, read a couple chapters, let me know what you think. It's it's kind of interesting to follow one of these hypothetical animals through a normal series of events. I don't want to really spoil anything, but a normal series of natural events that might happen in her life. As a reader, there's probably something in there for you to sink your teeth into, but especially as a writer, see how somebody has done it who's gone before you, and see what kind of lessons you can learn from that and how you might apply it to your own craft. All right, that's it for now. I'm gonna get focused back on reading the map here, so y'all drive safe. I'll see you out there.